Okay, this video is specifically to be an introduction to role playing for a group of people that I intend to create a one shot Dungeons and Dragons adventure for uh, that is going to be philosophy themed, specifically for players that have never done this before, or maybe they've done it a long time ago, or they've seen it maybe and they don't quite get it. Mainly because I know there's a lot of trepidation about it for people that are new to this. Now, this is almost endemic to me. That's the first thing I need to say. I've been doing this for 35 years. My first game of Dungeons and Dragons was when I was 13 years old. Okay, and this is back in the days, pretty much before the internet it existed. But um, I spent a lot of time playing these games. I had whole summer vacations where I would pour over this stuff, and we would play for hours at a time with lots of spare time. So do keep in mind that someone like me, it's this is, while I hesitate to use the term mastery, you won't find many people that have this much experience with these games that you'll find in this kind of context. So please don't be intimidated by any obvious knowledge, or knowledge that seems obvious to me. If anything, it's because I just am myopic sometimes to this stuff, and it can be overwhelming to those who don't know about this stuff, and that's okay. That I promise you, being a new player, it when I was in karate, I had studied karate for 10 years as well, and I do remember what it was like when I first learned that. The first white belt class you take, you end up standing in a room, a strange room, wearing these pajamas. You're moving your body in weird ways that you're not used to. And you feel kind of overwhelmed because it feels like everybody else knows what's going on. But we remember in that context as well what it was like. Everybody else in the class is going through the same thing. And our job as the people who are guiding this is to try to make this as easy as possible on you so that you have a good time. That's really what this is about. I want everyone to have a good time, and I think that's quite possible. As long as you're in the right frame of mind, in terms of just kind of going with the flow and knowing it's okay. I'm here to guide you, and it's going to be a lot of fun, I think. Um, but people have a lot of trepidation over role playing, for a couple of different reasons. And the first one, I think, is this big old book, hundreds of pages of text that looks like this. Oh my God, what am I getting into? Right? You're like, oh no, this is a whole bunch of rules. How am I gonna learn how to play this? And before we start playing, you don't have to read that book. Okay. The beauty of the modern day compared to my day is that we have an app that will do most of the calculations for you. You select from a drop down list. I'll teach you how to use the app um, over the next couple of weeks, and it's not that hard. I promise. Okay. The main thing you want to do is to kind of think of a character concept of a kind of adventurer type, and you can crib this from all sorts of different materials too. I'm sure there's plenty of different characters that you can think of that you kind of like and would kind of like to play, slip into the shoes of a little bit. Whether that's Brienne of Tarth in Game of Thrones, or that's Gandalf the Wizard. Maybe he won't be as powerful as him, but that kind of character. Or maybe Legolas, his ally, who's an elf that shoots bows, or whatever. Just a general concept, and the details will be fuzzy when you first start playing with your new character. As long as you have a general idea of the kind of character that you want to play, we'll help you flesh out the things that you need to flesh out, and the rest just comes with playing the game. We're telling a story, an interactive story is what I consider this, and it's actually to your disadvantage a little bit to put too much thought into who they are and stuff, because part of the game is just telling the story, and especially for a one shot like this. Now we can of course continue playing if you guys get real interested, but for a one shot, you don't necessarily need to know. You can even just kind of project yourself into the character, just as you would imagine, if you were a raging barbarian, what you would be like, or whatever. It's just a game of pretend. Okay. And that heads into the second piece of trepidation, especially during COVID. There were a lot of people, they were out of work actors that were making role playing games on or playing role playing games on video for entertainment for a couple extra bucks. And they're really good at improv. They're really good at creating elaborate characters and slipping into this character stuff. And the dungeon masters are absolutely incredible at mastering these games. If you've watched one of those and you're like, oh my God, I can't do that, I promise you, it's not like that for most of us. Okay. Those are cool games, I will say. They are fun as hell. But that is not expected here. This is not you having to act or anything like that. Now you can, and that's fun, I like, playing like a halfling rogue that's kind of sleazy. Like, my name is Slink, and I like Slink Stabworth, and no, I'm not a bad guy, I promise. It's that kind of thing where you can play around with it, but it's you don't have to. Okay, you just tell me what you want to do. You maybe say what you want your character to say, and I'll guide you through the rest. But don't think that you have to like you know put on an improv show or anything like that. It's not like that. It really isn't. It can be, but that is not a requirement. Absolutely not a requirement. Okay. So what is this then? Okay. Um, the rule set establishes a way for the players to create different characters with different abilities, but it's a level playing field. Nobody can do everything, which is true in real life. And you're going to be good at some stuff and not so good at others. And you're really what you're doing is you're kind of selecting a role for how you play in a party. And one of the things about this game is usually it's a good idea to be diverse in the types of roles your character plays. Right? It's good. It's good to have one person, one or two people that are good at really fighting and getting up in people's business. But you don't want to have everybody doing that because if they all get hurt, you could be in trouble, or they might not be very good at talking to the innkeeper who has the secret that you need to get the answer for, or something like that. And likewise, you don't want to all be wizards because, if that magic runs out, then you're in real trouble, right? So it's really a good idea to have a variety of different characters who are all good at different things, and they fill in the gaps, just like real life, where everybody's doing their part because the whole is greater than the sum of those parts, right? Um, now, in Dungeons and Dragons, I'm referred to as a dungeon master, and what this means is that I'm the storyteller. My job is to actually do this all for you. Most of the work comes to me because I'm the one that's creating the adventure and interacting with you on behalf of the different characters that you will, as player characters, interact with and meet, whether they be friends or hostile, whether you see them or don't, monsters, all those other things. I'm the one that's responsible for playing those, and your job is just basically to slip on the role of that character and interact with them in the way that you choose to. Now, you can choose to do anything, just like real life, and you can even elevate into violence if you choose to, and you own the consequences of that. Um, but the point is, my job is to also guide you through the adventure as the storyteller, and my role as the dungeon master. Um, which means that even though I'm serving as something of an adversary for you, uh, I'm not your enemy. Okay, and there's no winning in Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, you can lose, I suppose, if everyone gets killed because you made a series of poor choices or whatever. But my goal is not to ruin your characters. I am not trying to destroy you. I am trying to provide a series of meaningful challenges that you overcome so that you feel a sense of satisfaction as you play the game. You won't be able to succeed at everything you try to do. My job is to make sure that you have an appropriate challenge so that you can succeed at some stuff enough, just like anything in life, so that if you keep working at it and keep trying, that you will succeed or maybe live to fight another day or something like that. Okay. Um, but the interaction is really what it's key. My job is to balance the game and present a challenge that you can solve and can do, and not crush your spirit and just wipe you out with incredible difficulty, but also at the same time not make things so easy that you feel like, what was the point of that, right? I did a video not so long ago about that aspect, and it just really comes down to Nietzsche. What is happiness but the feeling that power is growing and resistance is overcome? And that's the sensation that I'm trying to replicate. Now, when you role play, it really comes down to two types of play that interact with one another based on what's happening: combat and not combat. Combat is very technical, and I'm not going to go into that here. And for the most part, you don't necessarily need to know a whole lot about it. I don't intend actually for this adventure to be very combat heavy, although you can punch anybody's lights out if you if you wish to try. But I will try to introduce it a little bit so you get a little taste of what it is. Um, just just it will probably be low stakes, and it will kind of just teach you how that works, but it's not going to be a major element of the game, and so I'm not even really going to go into it at this point. The other element, non-combat, we call it theater of the mind. Okay, and really what that is, it's not very technical, although we do use the rule sets um, in order for you to understand and advance the story. And during that time, I'm usually very elaborate in describing the scene that you're in, and give you a sense of the atmosphere, who's around, and then when you choose to interact in some way, I tell you what happens. So, for example, you are in a bar, a pub of some sort, and you're all having a drink. Okay. Now, it's not particularly challenging to do a lot of things. You can go up to the bartender and say, I would like a drink. And he will say, that will cost you 3 gold. And you can pay him the 3 gold and you take your drink. And, you know, probably won't give you any real challenges, but, maybe he's poisoned you or something. Um, But in any case, if there's anything particularly challenging that you're trying to do, let's say you're trying to steal something from someone in that bar, you see someone who has a purse that's attached to their belt, you want to try to steal it. Well, I'm going to make you roll a difficulty check. And in my mind, I know how difficult it is, or in the stats that I've written down or whatever, I know how difficult it is. And I'm going to ask you to roll a die in order to attempt to do that. I'm going to give you the option to back out when that die roll comes up, because that may not be a good idea for somebody who's not very clever or deft with their fingers. This is a D20. The D20 system is what Dungeons and Dragons uses, and that is the most common dice that you use to roll in this game. It is, of course, a 20-sided dice from numbers 1 through 20. Based on your character, you'll have a set of skills that have a certain bonus to the skill that you're trying to attempt. So let's say for that one, that is a sleight of hand is the name of that skill, and you'll have a certain bonus or maybe a penalty based on the kind of character that you have. And I'll tell you roughly how difficult that will be based on your expertise, and then you'll roll this dice. Now let us say that you have a bonus of +5 to your sleight of hand, but this guy's kind of aware, so you have a difficulty level of 15. This is called a difficulty check. You have to meet or beat a 15 on a combination of the die plus your skill bonus to steal that purse. If you succeed, and he does not notice, perhaps. But if you fail, he does notice, and you don't get the purse, and now you have to deal with the consequences of this guy you just tried to steal his purse from, right? So it behooves you to behave in general if you don't want to deal with the consequences of failure, but it's also worthwhile to try if you need to do something like steal the key from the guard who's got the prison. That's the way you get out of the prison, for example. You may need to try to do that, or feel that that's the right thing to try to do in that circumstance. How that is all calculated is based on what are called your abilities or attributes. And in Dungeons and Dragons, there are 6 of them. There is strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. And they all represent a certain amount of capability based on those kind of traits of any given person has. Now, strength is obvious. It's your physical strength. It's also how hard you hit with a heavy type of weapon. Dexterity is how deft and nimble you are. That can affect how hard it is for an enemy to hit you, and as well as is used for attacking with certain types of weapons like bows or light weapons like a short sword. Your constitution represents how tough you are, your body, and it informs how many hit points you have, which is a special attribute that you have that basically is a number of how much damage you can take before you fall unconscious. Your intelligence is how clever you are and how much you know, your ability to figure things out. It also is what wizards use as the primary form of attack in terms of their spellcasting ability. Wisdom is more intuitive. It informs things like your perception and your insight, your ability to kind of get a feel for things, a vibe of things. And it also informs how wizards or clerics and druids use their spells. And then charisma is basically how glib you are and how what's your first personality, and that informs your skills like persuasion and intimidation, and is also used as the spellcasting ability for certain special classes like bards who sing as part of their spellcasting, or however you want to interpret how they cast those spells. Um, Related to each of those attributes are what are called saving throws. Whenever something bad happens to you, you have to roll a saving throw to see whether that bad thing happens or it does not happen. For example, if you get poisoned, somebody has slipped some poison into your beer. That poison has a certain difficulty level. And when that poison enters your system, you have to, again, roll the d20, take your saving throw modifier, and add that to that roll, and see if you can beat that. If you do not beat it, the effects of the poison hit you, whatever those happen to be. But if you succeed, if you meet or beat that number, based on your bonuses and what you rolled on the die, you do not deal with the effects of that. And likewise for a variety of other things, which I won't go into. Really, what it comes down to is when I try to do something to you as your adversary, as some enemy on the field or whatever tries to do something to you, I will often ask you to make a difficulty, a saving throw to see if it actually works. You can also do any of these things back to another creature. If you happen to have a spell or ability, poison of some sort, that enemy also has to make a check to see if that bad thing happened to them. And in this way, you interact with the world. You attack with your proficiency bonus based on what it is you're trying to use to do that. So if it's a big sword, you're using your strength. And if you're using a deft weapon like a rapier, it uses your dexterity. And if you're a spellcaster, you use the related spellcasting modifier to cast those spells to attack the enemy. And that determines if it hits them. When you roll that die, you add that bonus. The enemy will have a flat number called the armor class that you're trying to beat when you attack them. If you meet or beat that number based on what you roll on the die, you hit them and the effect hits them. Otherwise, if you don't roll that high, the attack misses or it glances off their armor or whatever, and they're not affected by your attack for that particular thing. The way the theater of the mind aspect of the game will work is something like this. You all are sitting in a bar and you see a bartender. His name is Gruck. He is a half orc, looks very tough. And there are various bar patrons all engaged in conversation. You see as some of them seem to be well heeled. They may have something on them, but you don't know for sure while you're looking. And they all seem to be speaking about rumors about something. What would you like to do? So the players will discuss with each other what they would like to do in this particular circumstance. And perhaps the rogue says to themselves, I want to know if there's any money on those well-heeled patrons you just described. What I will tell him is to make a perception check. So on his character sheet, which is on an app, you can use the app for this. You look up your perception skill, you roll the die, you tell me what number you got. I will tell you if your perception was high enough to determine any information that might be relevant to you. What are you looking for? I'm looking for money. You do see a purse. And in the previous example, I talked about what would happen if he tries to steal that purse. If, for some reason, he fails that roll to take that purse, that man become irate. Hey, you're trying to take my purse. Another character may try to talk this man down. There are a variety of ways to do this. He has a deception roll, an intimidation roll, and a persuasion roll that he can use to talk to this character to try to convince him to do something else. Now, that really involves the language that you're using. Persuasion. Oh, hey, that's just a mistake. I didn't mean, he doesn't mean any harm. He's kind of a little grabby or whatever, but don't mind him. The bard steps in and says this, rolls high enough. The other guy would be like, tell your friend to keep his hands off, or intimidation. You send your half orc over there. Hey, don't you cause no trouble. If he rolls high enough on his intimidation, that guy might, okay, never mind, just leave me alone. Deception, that wasn't him. That was that guy over there. If he succeeds that roll, that guy might be convinced. This other person was trying to take his purse. All these different ways that you can interact are up to you. That is part of the way you interact with this game, is to think about what you would want to do in that particular situation. You tell me what you want to do. Hey, I want to try to persuade this guy that other guy did it. That's a deception check. You're lying to him. That is not what happened. So you roll against that skill. Tell me what you rolled, if that's what you're going to do. And so on and so forth as the game proceeds. Now, of course, that is a very simple scenario. I am not going to make you stay in a bar and pick pockets. That'll be something a little more fun and clever. But it illustrates the larger point that this is how you interact with the world. I tell you what you see, you tell me what you want to do, and if necessary, I tell you to make a roll to see if you're successful at that thing that you're trying to do, and then we determine the outcome of your success or failure, and so on and so forth. That's it. That's all there is. All the numbers are right there on the screen once it's been calculated out as you select your character. And if we enter into combat, then I'll lead you through what that means. I'll give you a very brief conversation. Actually, I said I wasn't talking about it, but it'll give you a quick idea of what combat is like. When combat happens, everything changes, and usually we bring out a map. Well, you can also use theater of the mind as well if you're trying to resolve things quickly. But the map makes things more fair and easy to understand what's happening. When you what's called roll initiative, you roll another d20 to determine what order you are in, and so do all the enemies that are going to attack you. And whatever that order is, that is who moves and takes their actions for their turn. You, generally speaking, have one action, one bonus action, and move on your turn. So if you're across the room and you see this guy is going to attack your friend because he failed his deception roll, I don't believe you, and decides to pull out his knife, you have to close the distance to him before you hit him. So how much move do you have? We'll look at the map, determine if your character has enough movement free for his turn to close the distance. He closes the distance. Excellent. I wish to attack him. That takes your action. You get one of those per turn. So he's going to attack. And you make that die roll to see what number you get. If that meets or beats that creature's armor class, you hit him. At which point you roll your damage dice, which generally speaking are one of the other crazy dice in this game. Anywhere from a D4 to a D12 based on the weapon you're using. You roll that. Any damage bonus that you have from perhaps your strength, you add those all up, and that is how many hit points you deduct from his total. When an enemy reaches 0 hit points, we consider them dead unless there's some special circumstance. That does not happen to your character, however. Player characters get what are called death saving throws. You have the opportunity, you are incapacitated, and you have a number of, every time your turn comes around, you have to roll this check to see if you die. If you fail 3 times, you die. If you succeed 3 times, you live. But at any point, if one of your friends assists you to heal you and bring you up above 0 hit points, then you do not have to make those throws. You've been saved. In this way, by cooperating with your friends, you probably won't die unless you're putting yourself in a very dangerous and foolish position. You can usually at least get out of there if you keep your wits about you. I will have an objective or something that I'm trying to lead you to. That will not always be obvious to you, and it's very easy to derail a game, trust me. You may choose to go left when I was hoping you would go right. I provided you too many options. But I will do my best to try to drop subtle hints to lead you on the right path to where I'm trying to take you in the story so that you do not feel like you're just wandering around. I will try to give enough context clues to let you know what the next logical step is. In our bar example, you may say, well, all these people are talking. Um, what would you like to do? I would like to see if I can't eavesdrop and hear what they're talking about. Again, you roll a perception check. If you succeed, you're successful in hearing a little bit about what they're talking about. Oh, the Lord. He was saying a caravan was supposed to come into town, but it hasn't arrived for a couple of days, and he's very concerned that caravan has gone missing because there's some important stuff there. Now, you don't necessarily have enough information, but you can ask around about it. Or perhaps you do glean enough information. He says, oh, they were coming from the north. And you could try to then leave the bar and try to travel to the north and find out more about it. But you could also approach those characters, which you don't need to make a difficulty check, and say, hey, I hear you talking about this caravan. What do you know? And in most normal circumstances, it's news or gossip, and they'll be willing to tell you. You don't have to make a roll for that particular act. But if he doesn't want to tell you for some reason, maybe he was involved, he'll be like, nah, just go away, leave me alone. You again can use your persuasion or intimidation or deception checks. Oh no, I'm with the Lord. He's sent me. Deception. I told you to tell me, or else. Intimidation. Oh, listen, I don't mean to interrupt. This is very interesting to me. I'm fascinated. I'm a bard. I like to gather information so I can spread that news. What do you know? You persuade him to tell you. I have now led you on this caravan hunt without you really even kind of knowing. Maybe you do. You get the hint. I'd like you to go check out this caravan and learn more. They'll tell you, oh, hey, here, it's on the map. X marks the spot. So that will give you some lead to the next step, next part of the story. And so on and so forth until we reach the conclusion of how the story goes. And it is interactive. I don't know where the story is going to go. I don't know if you make foolish decisions to attack the bar and bar patron. If you wish to do that, it would probably not turn out well for you. But we can role play that particular outcome and see what happens. What the dice tell us is what we say. Because there is an element of probability. You're not going to succeed at everything. You're not always going to damage the guy when you take a swing at him. The better you are at swinging a sword, the more likely you are to hurt him. The more tough he is, the longer he's going to survive it or be able to glance off those blows and deal blows back to you in return. So it is important to be mindful of certain circumstances to make sure that you're engaging in an appropriate manner that you can actually squeeze your way out of if things go wrong. And sometimes I might present to you something that seems insurmountable. Perhaps your fairly low level characters come upon a giant cave troll, right? I will just basically let any warrior type of character know right away when he looks at that thing, there's no way I'm going to take that thing out on my own. Sometimes I encounter human beings like that. We're like, oh my goodness. I don't know what I would do if I have to deal with this guy. But at that point, the game rewards lateral thinking. if you climb up into the rafters and start dropping rocks on this guy who can't climb up there and who's not too smart, who might get aggravated by what you're doing and not run away, you can take this creature out without suffering any blows because he can't actually reach you. So that I encourage characters to think outside of the box and ask questions about the scenario. Hey, how big is this room? Is there any rafters up there? What have I got to work with? Can I climb up there somehow? If you ask me that question, I'll tell you. You might need to make a difficulty check to somehow clamber up there. Once you're up there, you have the drop, quite literally, on your enemy. If you have the material up there, you could maybe finish the job without getting hurt at all. In fact, I encourage it and reward it very heavily when you come up with something clever like that. Anyway, that is the basic introduction. I will give more details about the links to the application, and I will probably do a Discord seminar at some point to help everybody to figure out how to build a character. I'm not going to give you too many options so that you do not suffer from analysis paralysis. But if you have a character in mind and the basic feel of them, we can figure out together how to put that together so that when we do engage in play, we can get started right away, and we can proceed from there. All right, that's it. Talk to you guys later.